You know you need fiber for a healthy gut, but do you actually know how to get it? Quaker's been serving up fiber since 1877, with over 100 great-tasting, good source of fiber options to choose from. Whether you like old-fashioned oats, instant oatmeal, granola, or oatmeal squares, Quaker makes it delicious. So good. Get your fiber with Quaker. Shop Quaker's good source of fiber products at a store near you.
This program contains subject matter and language that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Savaged, unfiltered.
Welcome to Savage Unfiltered. I'm your host, Michael Gardner. Guys, we are joined by, once again, the author of many books. He's written several, guys, and every book behind him is unique in its own specific way. The author and writer, Branch Isole. Welcome to the show, sir. Welcome back.
Good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me on again. It's great to hear you.
It's great to have you back on the show, sir. Last time we had you on the show, we got into a lot of great detail, a lot of great topics. And one of the reasons why we brought you back was because of that, but also to, reflect on some of your other novels and stories that you had wrote. There was a book that I had picked up here that you were kindly enough to send me on Reflections on Chrome. I want to get into that first before we get into the main topic today, which is being titled Coffee Shop Talk, Finding Small Talk in Poems in Everyday Life. Okay. And I find that fascinating because I'm a small talk type of guy. I find some of the small talk to be one of the most important types of the conversations, which a lot of people are, different, but it's one of the type of, how can I say it? Junctures, I should say, in my life that I live by. So, Mr. Isole, the latest book, I'm taking this as the latest book that you have written, Reflections on Chrome. This parking lot, recent. This parking lot confessions and poetic, right? Prose. Where did you now the image on this book is very, very interesting, with street lights or parking lights. How did you come across writing this book?
Well, it's interesting, that we're talking about the coffee shop venue this morning, because in a coffee shop, you have people who are intimate or personal conversations with other people who they have trust in, right? They're revealing a lot of what's happening in their lives and happening to them personally or at work. Well, when people are having intimate conversations late at night, oftentimes with people who are important to them in their lives, but not necessarily a primary person in their life, you'll often find them in, isolated areas. And so that's where the parking lot comes into play. It's a space that's intimate and isolated. It's a space where conversation with somebody, you can have a conversation that has purpose, and you can also have a conversation that deals with issues involved in the relationship. So those two spaces are very similar in terms of what people use them for, to reveal things that are happening in their lives.
And, it's interesting that you say that, because, some of these poems that you've written in this book, Reflections on, you could see that in pretty much an everyday coffee shop. Different people have different lives, different, scenarios, and it's interesting, and we're going to get into a little bit of that maybe towards the middle of this show. But I wanted to bring out some of my favorite poems that I had seen in this book, if it's okay with you, Mr. Isole. Now, the one poem is towards just about in the middle of the one bottle of one cup of coffee. Now, those words, one bottle of beer, one cup of coffee, interesting, because there are those are two things that I love in this life. I love a nice cup of coffee, and I enjoy a nice bottle of beer from time to time. What was
that poem is about two men in a European setting where they are talking about the past, right? And in that venue, in that kind of a situation, one could have a bottle of beer and the other one could have a cup of coffee. But the focus is not on the drink so much as it is on the conversation, again, as you would do in a coffee shop. So they are ex-World War II participants, and they're reminiscing on their experiences, and so that's where the conversation goes. It's they both have a different beverage, but they're talking about something important to both of them.
Yeah, so I mean, they're having conversations, pertaining to World War II, and the backdrop of it is, moments of pain, moments of glory, and they're kind of finessing, differently as individuals, but reflecting on their past moments, and it's so interesting that you speak to an author here, such as myself on the show, and that conversation branch can be turned into a poem. It's a talent. I must say, you have a talent on taking a conversation and turning it into a poem. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to get into another one here. Escape. Towards the middle of this book here, folks. That was another favorite. I had several favorites in here, but I'll break them down to three. Escape, right? I'll read the first couple of words. Out of the Bonique of A Day of Lilies, all of whom wait patiently, expecting soon to die. Okay? The first couple of words, very powerful, I may add. Was that taken out of a coffee shop as well, too, with a conversation, or how'd you come across that one?
Well, actually, I was in a friend's home, and I was waiting for them. They were taking care of some personal business, so they had me in the living area. And as I, looked around to see what they had, it's interesting that even like today, when you watch podcasts and things where people are on from their homes, it's interesting to see who's in their kitchen room, who's in a motel room from wherever they're broadcasting. So I happened to be in a friend's home, and I was looking around at all the accoutrements, and there was a bouquet of lilies up on the mantle. And each lily obviously is as it fades from, this present place. But there's one there who looks over of the vase and contemplates how to escape its fatality that's on the horizon.
That's interesting. And then the last one here, I want to go into something that struck me very on a personal side, and then also, just everything. I mean, because for the folks that don't know me very well, before I moved to the state of Florida, I come from the state of New York. I was born and raised in New York City. So the last one there, towards the end of this book, folks, Twin Towers. Okay. Now, this poem can be looked at many different ways, different angles. I look at as on a personal side because I was in New York City when the Twin Towers came down. Now, I look at as struggle. I look at as decisions, responses, and everything in this poem literally hits me on what I personally experienced that day, 21 years ago. I was a young man, 19 years old, and my conscience, from my breath.
Alexa, it's game day.
Streaming football on Prime Video. Closing blinds. Chilling rosé. Rosé?
Well, it's an afternoon game.
Huh? It's like she can read your mind. Your mind. I love that we get to sleep at night. Ordering fresh mint mouthwash. Extra strength.
I'm thinking I should get a spray tan, because that's on Wednesday.
Activating blender.
Funeral's on Monday.
What about the gold, Papa? Can't you see that treasure all along? It was you.
Love the eye patch. When does the show open?
March 8th.
Setting reminder to fake your own death on March 8th.
What the?
When you have to do those love scenes with hot guys, is that fun or is that like the worst?
It's the worst.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
This bread's delicious.
Oh, God.
Did you make it?
Yes, it's from my Gammy's recipe.
Announcement. Gammy is short for she bought it at Whole Foods. Announcement. Colin left the oysters in the car for 5 hours.
It's probably better Alexa can't read your mind.
Bad idea.
Watch the game.
Hit me. And every little word, that Branch had written in this poem, I felt, that day, 21 years ago. I felt darkness. I felt struggle. I felt, guilt. I felt shame by not possibly helping out. I was put in shock. Is that one of the reasons why you've written this poem, Mr. Isole, in reflect of the Twin Towers, or is it an entirely different type of poem for yourself?
Well, that's a great question, Michael. As we alluded to in the first two poems that you had pointed out, the conversation is about experience, right? And even with the second one, with the lily, with an an animated object, but not a human, the story reflects the struggle that each of us has, in our daily lives. It can be from a male standpoint, a female standpoint. No matter who the protagonist may be, the things that are happening in the story are people's lives. And in the Twin Towers, I didn't specifically, reference the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers that are referenced in the poem are actually the concept of right and wrong, right? But if you go through the poem, you notice that the refrain is always struggle begins. And so the identifiable parts of the poem for you were certainly, something that real that you experienced firsthand. And that's the idea behind all of the works, are to reach the reader into the story, but then allow them to reflectively, take from the story what it is that has meaning or impact to them. But I appreciate the comment on the Twin Towers.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, because that last poem that I expressed here on the show, I picked that one as a favorite because there's a lot of reference of what I had experienced, like I said, 21 years ago in Lower Manhattan, and the amount of experience and the amount of just everything behind that horrific day that happened is just, some of it can be explained, which I'm going to have that on this upcoming Sunday. We're doing a special show, and I strongly suggest, the listeners here that are, listening to this show, please listen to that show this upcoming Sunday, because we're going to be doing a very, very special show in honor of the men and women, the brave men and women, firefighters, paramedics, police officers that paid their lives, to help others during that very, very sad day of 9/11. But back to the show here, folks. The parking lot confessions that Branch Isole had written, and it's just how I see it. Branch is going back to the topic today: coffee shop talk, finding small talk and poems. This book literally paints the picture on literally everyday life that we experience. It may be, at a coffee shop. It may be at a simple Walmart, or anywhere we go, a gas station, a parking lot, anywhere. It is literally the experiences that we find in life that makes them special. A lot of people look at as poems. A lot of people look at as short stories. You, sir, you like to write a lot of poems, it seems. And I find that very interesting, on some of that. I also find it interesting on, some of your other books, that you had written. But this one right here, this Reflections on Chrome, this one really stands out. I have ordered a few other books that you had written on that I found quite intriguing. But hopefully we can save that for another topic, another episode. But just the meaning behind this. Do you find yourself, with, like I said, I might be repeating myself, but do you find yourself with the experiences that you experience in your personal life on the ideas that come to your books, or are they based on fact, or are they more or less based on fiction?
Well, both, it's from their own experience. So my stories are like experience, but they're not necessarily autobiographical, right? I'm a great observer, or I like to think of myself as an observer of life and what's going on around me. Here's for stories, everywhere that I am, whether it's in a crowd, or at a coffee shop, or out in nature in the backyard. There's elements of things happening all the time, which just become triggers for different stories. And I think we had mentioned before, the purpose of the stories and the poems are to establish acknowledgement of the lessons of life that we all go through and experience, although we don't necessarily recognize them as such. They're the things that we encounter with the people and the events and the circumstances that we engage with in our life. I find, you didn't mention the one part that's specific to the coffee shop talk, and that's latte chat, which was actually that one was actually from a coffee shop. Anyway.
Yeah, that's towards the beginning of the book. Yes.
Yeah. And observing some people in a coffee shop. And it deals with a couple of different conversations that are going on. But that's it. That, it's, every place can be for a story to come alive. It's just whether you use your imagination or the things and the people that you come in contact with, there's always a story hidden someplace.
Sure. And I want to get into that with you, with the story behind its story, right? Or the poem behind the poem. What made you first get into, writing this type of, writing these type of books, these type of novels, whether they were stories or poems? Have you ever been a poet, or did you find that later in life? How'd that come across you?
I found writing, expression of to tell stories late in life. I didn't start writing until I was in my early 50s. So I had a wealth of experience and cumulative, engagements with people and situations all through life, just like everyone else does. It just happened that, I had a motivation to write some of these things down. And that's how it started. I didn't ever thought I would be a writer as such, and certainly not a published writer. That just evolved. Stories, all coming together, you get to a point where you've got a collection, and you either publish it or you keep it hidden away for yourself. So I just said, okay, it's time to share this with the world, and some people it may touch, and some people it may not. But unless you put it out there, there's no way the world can see.
Hey guys, this episode today is brought to you by our good friends at Harry's.com. What is Harry's.com? It is a awesome, affordable set of razors and other products as well too. Harry's has been around since 2013. Back in 2013, the makers of Harry's, which is a German company, realized that shaving could be easier, more affordable, and as well more enjoyable, right? So they decided to come up with a concept to create super quality razors for the everyday Joe. These razors are super affordable, they're super convenient, and they're easy on the wallet, guys. These are quality blades that are designed in a factory in the country of Germany. Where can you pick up these razors? Just about everywhere, guys. Walmart, Target, Walgreens. I've seen them at CVS. They're just about everywhere where you can buy razors at. If you can't go into a store or you'd like to shop on their website, they do have a website, guys. Harrys.com. Visit them at Harrys.com, and you can also explore their full range of products, including body wash, bar of soap, face wash, shaving cream, shaving gel, post-shave mist, face lotion, just to name a few. They even have anti-dandruff shampoo and conditioner, guys. Constantly coming out with new products, new set of brands to their brand. So visit Harrys.com.
Notice that some authors and some other writers, where they I think they do it intentionally, where they hold that certain idea or thought, and when it's ready to be released, they release it, because the writer or the author only knows the accurate time to release that information, right? To release that novel. And I think it's important when you're an author or writer, especially in any time, now, or is it 20, 30 years ago, whatever time it may be, it's important to know when the time is to release that certain book or novel to the general public. Because sometimes, and I've seen this too, I've seen other authors where they release it sometimes too early, and it's just bad timing. You're not gaining the attention of the consumer. You're not picking it up correctly and accurately, or they're not picking it up correctly and accurately. Do you find that? Have you found that in your early career as an author or writer, or that really never came across your mindset?
Well, I don't know about the mindset. You release when it's finished, right?
Sure.
It takes me approximately 8 book, but then it takes another year to year and a half to edit it and tweak it and get it the way you really want it to be. So at some point, you've massaged it and manipulated it to the full extent, so it's ready to go. And that's when when I release a book, is when I'm satisfied that no more can be done to get it to that place that I want it to be for the reader. So some of them can come out real quickly together as they finish up. Others languish, in the catalog, waiting for that spark to take place where it's the right time. But when is it the right time? You never know. To do marketing, you have to do promotion, you have to hope and pray that with readers, and then they will sort of carry the ball for you and speak of it to people that are important in their lives when they see, well, here's something I've read that not only applies to me but applies to someone else in my life who is important and needs to hear the same story, the same poem.
Oh, sure. And I mean, I can relate to editing, with editing. I mean, editing and releasing content or material is really no different from, what we do here, on the show as a content creator or a podcast host. It's it's extremely difficult sometimes, especially as a podcast host. It's folks, it's very, very different. I just want to lay that out as a like I said, as a content creator or a podcast host is so much different than actually writing a book, or publishing a book. Two different ball games. A lot more editing involved with writing a book than it would be, literally creating a show, whether it's a talk radio show or a podcast. So much different. The amount of work that comes from designing a book, right? From the cover of the book, from the back of the book, to the subtitles, to the description, everything. Months and months of just thought process. So I get it. Sometimes I'm sure it could be a headache on your end, right?
Savaged Unfiltered.
Well, Michael, you hit the key there, and it is the editing. That's where you have that final opportunity to perfect the content, to get it the best it can be for your reader or your listener. So editing, I have found, is the key to really honing what it is, or in your case with the podcast, what it is you're trying to present. Your audience, why they keep coming back for more. And so your job obviously is to try and get guests or topics that will not only keep them coming back, but will give them quality content that they can take and then use in their lives. And that's the same thing that I'm doing with the books, is offering up that offer reflective identity to the reader so they can take something from the story and perhaps apply it in their own lives.
And, I think that's what, we find interesting about you, Branch, Isole, is you're a writer and author of different types of ideas, different types of thoughts, different agendas. Yes, you like to stick to poems. That's pretty much your what is it? Words, your background or backyard, so to speak, of writing books. You find that your angle, your platform, the poems. But your poems aren't always the same. You do get into different types of content, where folks, I'm going to remind the listener here that, some of Mr. Isole's material is really, ideal for the mature audience. It's intended for mature audiences only. Which a lot of his poems, you get into some mature type of content, whether it's sexual in nature or just about everything that we experience in life. Now, some of these poems that you have written and other novels that you have written, I've noticed some strong dialogue there. Again, does this come from past experience, or does it reflect on our society of what we're currently going through now, or maybe past society?
Well, I'm hoping both. The idea is to use situations, to use language, to use images of nonverbal communication, so that the story gives a complete story. That's the great thing about poetry, and is, as a writer, I try to have a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the presentation is as brief as possible. Poetry it's sort of the ancient literary form. It started out as storytelling, around the campfire in the cave, talking about life and how to survive life. Then it had its heyday, in the 16th century as a literary form. And then it sort of fell out of favor for a while. And now, with our technology, it's actually coming back into favor with a lot of people because it's short, it's easy to read, it's quick. You don't get involved in a 300-page novel. It's something you can read on the way to work, on the bus, on mass transit. It's something you can sit down and read in just a couple. But the seeds then are planted that you can take those images, that story, those words, and use them, mull them over in your head and see what they actually mean to you. So with the advent of I need it now, I need it quick, I don't need to get involved for the next 2 hours, some of the poetry and the short stories are really coming back into vogue, as long as they can still have an impact and reach the reader. And that's what my stories try to do, is reach the reader. And like you say, I write a lot of different topics. I write for adults primarily. I write about love and hate and sex and failure and rejection and success. I write about all the things that we experience in our daily life and our daily relationships, so that the reader can identify with the subject matter, and then hopefully a thought and they go, wow, I never thought of it like that, or wow, that story really twisted at the end and really surprised me.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, because poetry, again, folks, it reflects the mind, it reflects the spirit and emotions of what we're going through in life. And sometimes it's great to write poetry as a therapy type of scenario, right? You're going through some hard times. A lot of people, and this goes back to the early 1900s, early 1800s, where most people would write on a piece of paper a poem. That, like I said, they're possibly going through some type of turmoil in their life, or some type of stressful type of environment, or whatever it may be, and they would write a poem, and it would be used as a therapy type of scenario to balance out their stress and anxiety. And you had mentioned that poetry is starting to come back. I see that. I have a friend that's a professor up at Boston University. And he has said that many of his students in their spare time can be seen that, the parks around the university, the different coffee shops, whether they're Starbucks or any other coffee shop, just picking up a book, or, writing poems, and just, finessing with that. And it's interesting that, poetry is coming back, especially in today's times, where we live in a very challenging society. I also want to get into something here with you that, many poets today, Branch, they use the term slam to get attention of their audience. Do you use that terminology? Do you use that concept to try to get the attention of audience?
No, Michael, that's a whole different venue. I'm not a slam guy. I want to mention something you just spoke to, and that is, journaling and diaries, as you alluded to, have been around for centuries. People have been writing daily or weekly or monthly or whatever their time frame is, but they've journaled about their lives primarily to themselves, but often that leads to that story development. People who become writers, people who journaled or kept, and then poems most naturally evolve from somebody who's writing and dealing with emotions, in their lives. Most young poets, that's what they write about. They write about the struggles and the emotional, highs and lows that they're experiencing. And from that, it's sort of like bands their trade, learning their craft by doing covers of other hits. And so that's how you learn. We learn by, and that's how poets learn, writers learn. They journal, they keep diaries, they express their thoughts in words, and oftentimes that gives them the background and the confidence to start branching, writing stories, writing novels. It's sort of that whole writing process, and it starts, as a seedling and then blossoms.
Interesting. I wanted to bring up a point here with you. You had mentioned just briefly before that poetry is starting to come back, and I'm starting to see that little by little myself. What do you think the background of that is? Why do you think poetry is starting to come back? I know we live in movements more than ever today. Different types of movements, different types of trendy type of topics, right? But what do you think the movement behind poems? Why do you think it's all just coming back? Do you think there's a reason behind that, or do you think there's a reason behind poetry coming back, or do you find it more on a trendy type of scale?
Well, I think it's both. You've said it. It's a trend, but trends are simply once old being revitalized and coming back new, whether it's fashion, whether it's hairstyles, whether it's some avant-garde movement or avenue of expression, from an earlier decade or an earlier time. It comes back eventually, and it's morphed. It's changed a little bit. The poetry that you read today is much different than Shakespeare's poetry, or Lord Byron's poetry. It's different than when it had its heyday originally. The form is the same. The impact is the same. The emotions are the same. The language has changed a bit. And of course, our lifestyles, our existence has changed. We can deal with image expressions that were unknown 200 years ago. I mean, we just didn't have the technology. So our life has changed. Our lifestyle has changed. The emotions and the psychology hasn't changed. Man is still man, woman is still woman, and we still grapple with the same things they grappled with 200 years ago, 500 years ago. We've changed because our technology has changed and our lives have changed, but the inner us hasn't changed. So the inner emotions, the inner feelings that were expressed, in literature or in music or in art 2,000 years ago are just as applicable to us today as human beings.
Yeah, and I see that, and I also see that some of this poetry today, versus 2,000 years ago, when it first basically came into existence. The poetry then is a lot different now. You can also look at poetry in the political specter. I cover politics very, very highly here on the show. I see a lot of political viewpoints in poetry. I see it as a good thing, but I also see it as a bad thing. Do you see that as well too, Branch?
Well, politics is a big part of our lives, just like, those two have been around since the first breath we took. And both of those entities, our politics and our religions, are sometimes at odds, sometimes strange bedfellows. Both have a high degree of impact on our lives, on our daily lives, even though we may not fully understand going through our lives, fallout, the outcomes of those kinds of world and politics and religions basically control and morph a lot of our life.
Yeah. I just see the possibly, it can be looked as awareness, right? To get attention of the mind. as well as the senses.
Well, all entities are trying to get your attention, right? Whether it's a physical entity or an esoteric entity, or corporations or religion or politics, all of those are designed for people to get your attention and then trying to make you believe or think what they want you to think and believe. And so the goal is always the same. How do I garner the greatest amount of attention, the greatest number of followers, and then where can I lead them to? Some of that's beneficial, some of it's highly unbeneficial.
That's powerful stuff. Ooh, I'm blown away. Wow. I'm definitely gonna need a cup of coffee after this. I tell you that, Branch. But
or a bottle of beer.
Yeah. Either way. Well, the coffee is usually set in the morning. A nice Miller Lite sometimes is towards the late after dinner or something to wind and relax to. But going into here as we're going to close it out here with some of your work that you've expressed. I have to ask this here. I usually like to ask this question. When I have an author or a writer on the show, such as yourself, with your certain background with poetry, do you see yourself writing anything else besides poetry, or is that pretty much what you want to stick to, or basically be known as an author?
Well, that's how my expression comes out. I'd love to write the great American novel, but that's not me. It just isn't. I never thought I of myself as a poet or a short story. That's just what started to come out. So, I'm happy with trying to express myself and thoughts and ideas and opinions with people. And the way I do it is through the poetry and the short stories. I thought about trying to write a novel, but it's just not me.
Right, I understand. I'm sorry I had to put you out there like that, but it was just it's a question that I always like to ask, different types of writers or authors, because you really like to know, the true meaning behind their work, if they would ever branch into other types of novels or books or possibly series or different types of categories, such as, yourself, you like to write poetry, and I respect that. I really do. But, it's always a very interesting thought of bringing up, not only on this show, but any other show or, any other type of conversation with somebody, if they would ever branch into other types of work, possibly, fiction, nonfiction, science, politics, anything for that matter. So, I just wanted to bring that out there. And I do respect your sentiment and your thought on that. So, Branch, we're gonna close it out here, sir. Did you have any other types of comments or questions you wanted to add on the show, or possibly bring into the show before we close it out?
Thanks, Michael. I'd just like to invite all those listeners out there who haven't had a chance to read some of my material. There's a lot of it posted for free on my website, and there's a lot of it posted for free on my YouTube channel. So I would invite any of your listeners who've not been tuned into poetry or not been tuned into, real life expressed, where you can read about it without concern. It's there for you.
I'm telling you, good stuff. And Branch, I want to let you know that I'm a big fan of your work. I'm starting to pick up some other novels. I got to say on the show, as I close it out here, I don't want to say I was never a big fan of poetry. I just really, it's hard to really get into something when you don't know what poetry really is. I mean, I've had that thought on my mind for several years, even as a youngster, as a young man. I have looked at poetry once before. It's funny because when you get older and you experience, the aging process, you start to get involved with different types of things, different types of interest, and everything else. So I want to let you know that I've been becoming a huge fan of your work. I really would like to see more of it come out, and I wish the best of luck to you, sir. I really do.
Michael, thanks so much for the kind words. I appreciate you getting more interested in it, whether it's poetry or novels or short stories. The medium doesn't matter. What matters is, does it have an impact on me as a reader, and can it grow as a person and move forward? It opens more doors for us. It gives us more confidence that, hey, I haven't looked at this in the past for whatever reason, but maybe now's the time for me to put my toe in the water and see how it feels.
I agree with that. And in closing, Branch, I'd like to see more of this, and this is coming personally from me. The Reflections on Chrome. I would like to see possibly more series come out of that. I think you have some really, really interesting poems, just not in the Parking Lot Confessions, but I would love to see it become a series. That's coming from me.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. We'll take that into consideration. I'll talk with the big boss.
All righty. Sounds good. Guys, today, the author of Reflections on Chrome, his latest book, Parking Lot Confessions, the author and writer, Branch Isole, on the show. Thank you very much, Branch, and thank you for those who had listened. Remember to like button and follow button for all future and recent podcast launches on every major podcast platform.